Okay, everybody, we're about ready to get started here. Before we do a couple of housekeeping items, one, if you haven't signed in yet, there's a sign-in sheet over here on this table, regardless of what municipality you're visiting from. If you would please sign up. This way, if there's any information that needs to be distributed as a result of this meeting, we have everybody's contact info. Also, special thanks to Senator Judy Schwank's office for helping assemble this panel. We'll go through and introduce everybody that's here, and they'll talk about what their programs or what they can and can't do in response to leading up to and in response to a flooding event. We will have a question and answer session after everybody's done giving their short little presentation. We ask that everybody ask one question at a time based on the volume of attendees. If we have time for a second round of questions, we can do that. We can start a second round. So please ask a question, hopefully get an answer, and then take a seat, and then be ready to ask again when that opportunity arises.
You bet. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. Good to see everybody for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. I appreciate the township and the township leadership. My office is right upstairs, so we get the opportunity to communicate a lot together. But the impetus behind this meeting came together at a breakfast that we had actually back in August, after July 9th, which is, I guess, before the flood. At any rate, we met and we talked about what we've been seeing out in the field. And I know that there are people here also from Antietam area, from Lower Alice's Township as well. So everybody knows that there are numerous issues here that probably need to be addressed. And we agreed that morning that it'd be a good idea for us to try to get together and bring all of the resources so people could hear it directly from those folks that work in some of these fields, from conservation to emergency management, and then you have an opportunity to ask the experts the questions. So thank you to all of you that are here tonight as well for doing that. July 9th, unbelievable but over the weekend, I got 5 inches of rain. I don't know what you happened to see, not all at once, fortunately, but July 9th certainly was something that we couldn't have anticipated. And after the storm, my staff and I spent a number of probably a couple weeks making visits to different neighborhoods, both here in the township as well over in the Antietam area. As we know, they lost their senior and middle school as a result of that. And I just spoke with the superintendent. Their plans are still on hold in terms of what the future of that school would be. But, we're continuing to try to, find the resources that we can to answer the questions that you may have. And I also, at the outset, to say thank you to all the first responders that were out there and really made a difference in terms of assisting people, many of them who are facing the same problems in their own homes, and then made the effort to try to be there for the rest of us. So that's greatly appreciated. I've learned this over the years from the time that I was a county commissioner. When you have a disaster or something of that nature, this takes time, because it's not just what's happening locally in your municipality, but it's also at the federal and the state and the county level as well. There's, just a lot of different agencies that need to get involved in helping to mitigate some of the issues that we're talking about here. The reality of what we're experiencing today, though, I think it's important to say that, is partly caused by the frequency, not only the frequency of severe storms, storms like, I have never seen in my lifetime, but also by the way that we've developed our communities. If you look around, you can see houses are put here and there in places that we know now probably weren't a good idea, because the inability to manage, some of the environmental issues that those home building or businesses create in our communities. We have something that I think Dean Druckenmiller from the Berks County Conservation District will talk about, which is green infrastructure. We know better now about what we have to do in order to help mitigate some of this water. And interestingly enough, we had gotten some funding for that creek, the Antietam Creek, to do some watershed mitigation there, to put some plantings and, put the stream bed, correct some of that. And everything was there, assembled, ready to go, and then the storm hit. So that really set us back. And as you know, if you travel through there, PennDOT and their contractor did an amazing job to try to get that road opened up again as well. Representative Rossi and I, have worked together. We've gotten funding, whether it's from state environmental funds that we're able to access, or even the funds that we're able to get because we have a gambling casino in Berks County now. There's funding available to us called local share account, and we've used some of that when we could to help, put in some of that infrastructure that we're talking about. So with that being said, I just want to thank all of you for being here tonight. I hope we get to your questions. There's people with more technical information to assist you, but I'm happy to answer any questions as well. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Senator. Commissioners, Commissioner Lurch, do you say anything? If not, we can start the introductions.
My name is Kevin Lurch. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Vice President of the Gilbert Township Board of Commissioners. I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank all our guests for coming. I want to thank the residents from outside the township also for coming. One of the things that we talked about at our township meeting within the last couple of months, there's information that your local officials understand, and there's information that we don't understand. And I think over the years, sometimes we receive some conflicting information as to what we are allowed to do within stream banks and what we're not allowed to do. I know that years ago, things were very, very different. There's a lot more ordinances and state laws in place now that kind of guide, again, what is allowed and what isn't allowed. So one of the things that the Board of Commissioners of Muhlenberg wanted to do, besides having the breakfast meeting with the senator, and thank you very much for having that meeting with us, was to sit down with people who can give us some answers so that we can go back to the public and give you information so that you're hearing things firsthand. And I want to reiterate that in Muhlenberg Township, the board has been working very, very hard to understand and implement plans to mitigate flooding in the future. But we have to do it within the guidelines of, again, what we're allowed to do legally, and we can't do things that we're not allowed to do. So that's one of the meetings, one of the reasons behind this meeting, so that we get some information firsthand. So I thank you for your patience and your time. We look for some courteous discussion tonight. So with that, Jim, I'll turn it back to you.
So if we want, we can start with Mark. Mark, if you want to introduce yourself, you just have to press that button one time. Introduce yourself, tell everybody where you're from, and you can go through some of the programs that you offer.
Okay, yeah. My name is Mark Buckwater. I work for USDA, Department of Agriculture, so federal level, and specifically the Natural Resources Conservation Service, NRCS. I work as an engineer out of Harrisburg. Our Harrisburg office, we have a local office out of Leesport. I think it's the Ag Center. Nick Ramsey is our local contact. So as far as a lot of our programs are farm bill stuff, so we do a lot of work with private landowners for farmers. And we offer some watershed programs, and one that some of you folks may have seen some information about is our EWP program, our Emergency Watershed Protection Program. And I'm the program manager for that in Pennsylvania. It's a federal response program. So we're talking response to an event, to a national disaster like the significant rain and flooding we guys had. The program offers technical and financial assistance to help communities relieve imminent threats to life and property caused by damaged stream banks that may impair watersheds. So not necessarily flooding, but stream bank erosion, and an imminent threat to a home. The EWP program does not require disaster declarations. So that's one difference. Our state conservationist, Denise Coleman, can look at data, look at rainfall events, look at damages, and see if she wants to enact the EWP program. So that's a big difference. So as a response to the storms, NRCS put out a press release in late July to assess the damage and see and give Denise Coleman enough information to see if it's worth a declaration. We felt like it was, and we put out a damage response survey again end of July to try to gather, or based on that information, we declared an event. And I don't know if some folks in the audience filled out our response survey, but we have been going through that. Breaking down into some criteria for the event, it does require a sponsor. So at the federal level, we need to work through a local unit of government to secure any kind of grant funding for this program. So that's something we work through. I don't know, Dean, if you want to touch on that later. Potentially, as a conservation district and partnering with us. Now I'll talk a little bit more about criteria and what sites we're looking at to be eligible. So our state con has set limits for our current eligibility to be a home or residence or primary residence or business within 50 feet of a stream that has experienced severe bank erosion. It's not flooding. Detached garages, sheds, and basically not the living area is not eligible in that distance calculation. So examples would be several feet or more of bank loss, exposed foundations, or total failure of an existing structure. If parts of an existing wall fell over, but it's not fully compromised, that would not be eligible. The program cannot rebuild damaged structures such as driveways, walking bridges, things that say the patios is no longer there. We would not rebuild, but we would protect the home. So that's a little bit about the program. What it does, again, it's an immediate, imminent threat that not flooding the next event, but the potential the home could be affected the next event or the foundation be exposed. So that's the sites that are eligible. I know a lot of people here have been looking at flooding, and a lot of the sites we've actually looked at are not eligible just because it's in the floodplain. And even the response of armoring a bank does not protect it from flooding. And it does not rebuild folks' lawns. It armors in place where it is to protect that the home. And then to highlight NRCS, our staff make final determinations. We work with the sponsor, but ultimately NRCS makes the final determination for eligibility. And then another holistic program we offer is the Watershed Operations Program. This is more of a long-term flood protection outlook program. Again, the sponsor it takes a lot more, it takes up to 8 to 9 years till anything would be done, but it's basically a detailed study that looks at all kinds of alternatives to address flooding in a watershed. So we're not looking directly at a home, but more of a watershed. But there's a lot of overall arching economics that roll into it to see what's actually feasible in some of these reaches and streams. So I want to touch on those two. I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah. And what we'll do is I'd like to go through the panel first, and then we can open up for questions. That way we'll give everybody the opportunity to speak. We'll just go right around. Brian, if you want to introduce yourself.
Good. My name is Brian Gottschall. I'm here representing the Berks County Commissioners and our Chief Operations Officer. I'm the Director of Emergency Services for the county, and in that role, I act as the county's emergency management coordinator. Our office has a pretty diverse mission, but I don't think anybody's here to get a civics lesson. I think you want to learn about the flooding aspect of this, so I'll try to focus on what we do with that. So in the emergency management world, we kind of look at preparedness, prevention, mitigation, the types of things that we do to harden people, make them better prepared in the event that there is an emergency. And it really is about people. It's not only about property. It's training, education, planning. And we do a lot of outreach in our office. We're a local resource, along with your local emergency management coordinator to assist you with information about family planning and preparedness. Kind of building up to a little bit of a bigger program. We used to refer to this as a hazard vulnerability analysis and hazard mitigation plan. The feds have now rolled this into a more comprehensive program they refer to as BRIC, B-R-I-C, which is building resilient infrastructure in communities. And as part of that plan, we manage a pretty important document that I think often gets overlooked. And that is the county's hazard mitigation or BRIC plan. And why this plan is important is it is an opportunity for local government jurisdictions to identify projects that they would like to kind of get on the radar, if you will, in order to ensure that those projects have eligibility for funding. And there's a lot of federal money that if a project is not in this BRIC plan, it can't be funded. The unfortunate other side of that is simply being in the BRIC plan also does not mean it will be funded. Funding under this program comes in two forms. There's pre and post disaster mitigation monies. And pre-disaster mitigation money, I'm going to try to speak very plainly and not get into all the geek speak and really boil it down to what folks want to know. Pre-disaster mitigation money effectively is available on an annual basis, and it's money that the feds give to the state. The state looks at that money, they prioritize all across the Commonwealth projects that are in various BRIC plans and fund projects that meet their priorities. And as you can well imagine, they're looking at the best bang for the buck. They're not to say that people don't care about a project that affects your one property, but clearly a project that would affect multiple properties, especially multiple properties that have repetitive losses during disasters, are ones that rise to the top of the list. The other way that projects in the BRIC can be funded is in post-disaster mitigation dollars. And the unfortunate downside of that is that in order for those monies to become available, we have to get a presidentially declared disaster for an event. If we do get that presidentially declared disaster, then there's a percentage of the total money that is spent on that event that can be opened up and made available to fund mitigation projects related to the disaster event. I'm sure I'm not telling anyone in here something they don't know in that we have attempted to pursue a presidential disaster declaration for the July 9th flooding here in Berks County. I would imagine that many of you met with teams, joint assessment teams that were out from the locals, from my office, from the state and from the feds, who came around and assessed properties. If someone didn't meet you or didn't come to your specific property, that's not a reason to be concerned. The reality is that the way this program works is that we kind of assess a cross-sectional view of the community. And when the community cross-sectional view meets a certain threshold, that gets the attention of our state and federal partners who come in. And that joint assessment is really, quite honestly, a double checking of our work in the local area. If they see, they go to 10 properties and they see that the information that we reported for those 10 properties is spot on, they're going to be much less likely to want to see more. They go to the first 10 properties and they say, well, geez, you guys said these properties were really impacted. What we're seeing is some minor impacts. That raises some concerns for them, and they want to go see more and more and more to try to validate it. We felt very confident coming out of the assessment that was done for this event that our data was good, the information we provided upstream to the state and the federal government was good, and ultimately the state government through Governor Shapira's office did make a request for a major disaster declaration to FEMA. As it stands today, we're waiting to hear the answer back from FEMA on that major disaster declaration. The answer could come back in a number of different ways. The answer could be no. If the answer is no, we then at the state level, or we at the combined state, county, and locals will have to get together and collaborate and decide whether we think that was a bad call. Are we in essence going to appeal their decision? Or are we going to say, well, we tried our hardest, but unfortunately it just didn't meet the thresholds and it was not an unreasonable no, we're going to let it rest the way that it is. The answer may come back as a yes for individual assistance. Individual assistance is the stuff that you guys are likely most interested in. It's the opportunity for grant and or loan programs to affect private property owners and be able to assist you in your individual recovery. Another aspect of the program is what is called PA, or public assistance. And that's really a program that is intended to assist government jurisdictions. Repair of roads and public infrastructure. The school district, of course, is extremely interested in this due to the condition they're in down in Antietam. But the answer, if we get a yes, it could be a yes to one or both of those programs. And then it even gets more granular on the individual side as to what individual programs might be approved if we do get an individual assistance declaration. I had sincerely hoped, a week and a half ago when we learned about this program, that we would be able to come here tonight and give you an answer as to what we were hearing from the federal government. Unfortunately, the reality is that's not where we're at. We continue to press through our federal legislative delegation, and I would certainly encourage all of you as constituents to respectfully press your federal legislators to try to get involved and ask the Biden administration to give us an answer. We all want that answer to be yes. But the reality is that even a no would allow us to at least understand the playing field and move forward with other potential programs that might come to play in the event that that declaration is declined. And at the very least, the human side of that is, even if it doesn't open the doors to other programs or other funding streams that could help you recover, it at least gives you an answer to the question. And I think that's equally as important. We're 2 months out from the flooding event now. We're effectively a month and a few days out from the state having asked the feds. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've not seen everything, far from it. I have to go to people and ask a lot of questions. But I would tell you that in my 30 years, I've not seen a disaster declaration request take this long to get answered one way or the other. That's unfortunate. But it is where we're at right now.
Thank you, Brian.
Yes, Mike Stallbecker from FEMA, Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency. I'm the acting director of the Eastern Area Office, which is in Berks County up in Hamburg. And most of what Brian said, we would collaborate with them, with our counties, which are our customers. Our office covers 20 counties from the northern border to Philadelphia. We have a staff of 5 emergency management specialists that assist our customers with any of these programs, various subject matter experts in the agency, either in our office or in the Harrisburg office through the Bureau of Recovery and Mitigation, could assist them with any of the things that Brian spoke of specifically. The BRIC program, hazard mitigation, those kind of things. The folks in our office generally go out and assist our counties with the damage assessment process, and the people informed would then formulate that letter that goes to the federal government that he alluded to. Our office, of course, has been engaged not only with Berks County, but Bucks County, Northampton, and then again this weekend. In fact, I was up in Lackawanna today. They had some flooding that resulted in a fatality on Saturday. Wyoming, Luzerne also had some flooding and destroyed bridges. I know that doesn't interest you. My point is we're engaged on an eastern Pennsylvania size footprint. But yeah, I mean, most of the programs that Brian talked about, I'm not going to reiterate them. Our staff's engaged with his staff on almost daily, at least weekly.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Marshall. I'm actually a state NFIP coordinator for Pennsylvania. I work out of FEMA as well. I work out of the headquarters. So I know a lot of you are wondering what NFIP is if you are not familiar with it. So that is the National Flood Insurance Program. So what I do is I'm that point person for all the municipalities, all the residents, all the businesses and the counties as well. I'm that person that's in between everyone else and FEMA. I'm that point person in regards to that. So I deal with floodplain regulations, floodplain ordinances, getting those updated. I work with a lot of municipalities, if not all of them, on getting training that they need for those federal regulations that they need to abide by. But I'm also there answering questions for residents on a regular basis. Am I in a floodplain? Am I not? What can I do about it? You know, help me understand what I can do with my property and what I can't. How do I read this ordinance? So I'm out there, you know, as an in-between person, and I take those phone calls, I take those emails on a regular basis of trying to help people and educate them on floodplains in general. I typically do not do too much outside of the floodplain, But I can tell you that the flooding that happens across Pennsylvania over the past 20 years, over 85% of it has been outside of the FEMA regulated floodplains, and that's concerning. So I'm here to just answer those questions that you might have in regards to floodplains. Anything along as far as NFIP insurance, I can definitely help you. Private insurance, I can only see so much. I do work with the Department of Insurance on a regular basis and get numbers from them. So if there's anything that I can assist with along those lines, I'm here to help. But I do work with 67 counties, 2,500 plus municipalities and all the residents within there. So I am very visible to a lot of people. They've seen emails from me on a regular basis. So if there's any way that I can help, please let me know.
Thank you.
I want to thank the town for coming. I'm Mike Malinowski, gentlemen, knowing the president of the board of commissioners here in Muhlenberg. So I'm just looking forward to the questions and hopefully we can get you some answers that we weren't able to provide when you were there for our public meeting. So I'll turn it back over to Jim so we can move on.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next, Ed Boydo with DEP.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ed Boyd, so I'm a local government liaison for the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. But my role is to work with all the local public officials, whether that be townships, boroughs, or the counties, as well as the state legislators in the Senate and the House. My role is to really help them understand those regulations concerning floodplains, as well as many different environmental aspects of your everyday lives. What I'm here to talk about today is about what can be done in streams before and after the flooding events. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have for that.
Thank you, Ed. Dean?
Yeah, I'm Dean Druckenmiller. I'm the district executive over at Berks County Conservation District. To put it bluntly, our mission is to protect and conserve natural resources of Berks County, specifically soil and water resources. Under delegated authority by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, our district does review and approve new construction stormwater permits. And then we also review permits that would require stream encroachments as well. We also work with the NRCS and partner with them on their EWP program that was talked about earlier. In addition, we offer a small grant opportunity, mostly partnering with municipalities that does provide some financial assistance for stream restoration projects. So I look forward to any questions. You can always give me a call at the Conservation District if you are having any stream and flooding issues as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Doug?
Hello, my name is Doug Faber from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. Just to kind of discuss kind of what we do before and after a flood event. Before a flood event, we will take yearly surveys of our roadways. That's between pipes and bridges, and we do have almost 1,000 bridges in this county alone that we are responsible for. They are inspected on a 2-year cycle. Some are a year, some are 6 months, depending on the quality of them. At that time, we do inspect underneath the bridge for any sediment buildup and so on, any scouring of the bridge. We also yearly we survey each of our roadways, and that's pipes. If they're failing, if they're clogged, if the inlets are clogged, if the outlets are clogged up, and so on. But that being said, we can go down the road today and it'd be clear and a heavy rain come through and half those pipes are clogged up again. You know, we rely on you guys, you know, you live and it's your house, your home, the pipes in front of your house. We always encourage to call into our office. There's a customer care system. Let us know. Sometimes we don't know it. We appreciate when you tell us, so then we can go out and schedule a cleaning of it. Unfortunately, you know, the July 9th storm was, you know, a bullseye on the county, and it took a lot of pipes clogged and a lot of bridges have a lot of sediment that we are getting the permit process through DEP with DEP and getting them cleaned out. You know, with that said, we are, you know, we work behind the 8 ball. Every time heavy rain comes, all that sediment comes right back down. We clean 50 feet on either side of the pipe, 50 feet on either side of the bridge when we get the permits. The rest of the stream, we basically convey water from one side to the other. That's how we do it. The stream bed, we don't own the stream bed. We can't manipulate the stream bed. And that's where a lot of the problems come in our end of it is that maybe your neighbor up the street played with the creek a little bit and angled the creek a little bit because they didn't like it in their yard. Well, now that stream's going faster and it's coming down faster to the state road. It's coming down faster to your homes. Now it's taking all that sediment, coming down quicker. Doesn't take long for that to block that pipe. And now it's overflowing our road, doing damage to us too. So again, we're out there yearly cleaning pipes, flushing pipes, cleaning under bridges. The best we can, as fast as we can, but again, we encourage and support anybody. Let us know, call our temple office. You see something, say something, just let us know. We'll come out and take a look at it and we'll get it scheduled.
Thanks. Do you have anything to add or?
No, I'm Nick Dromus. I'm currently county acting manager of Ports County.
Thank you. And I can speak a little bit on behalf of Muhlenberg Township. At last month's commissioners meeting, the Board of Commissioners did engage their engineering firm to perform a study of the impacted areas in Muhlenberg Township to determine what can be done to mitigate flooding moving forward. We've also applied for and received 4 emergency permits to perform work in the stream. 1 project is completed, 3 more are scheduled. We have 2 more projects that we're waiting to hear back from DEP as to whether or not we need permits for them. There are additional obstructions in the creek. And plus all the cleanup that had been done, days after the event. If you live in the township in the affected areas, we probably collected debris and trash from inside of your house or from outside your property. That being said, unless Commissioner Wolfinger or Commissioner Pagan have anything else to add, we can open the floor to questions. I think in order to keep some semblance of order, we can, well, unless there's not gonna be a lot of questions, we can try up one side and down the other. And if we've got another round of questions, like I said at the beginning of the meeting, if we can please stick to 1 question per person, we can try to get through the crowd. And if we have additional rounds of questions, we can continue that process. So.
You signed in.
Yeah, we signed, I can't go by the list.
Some of us got here at 5, so we could ask questions.
Okay, come on up and please do.
You're not trying to be difficult. It's just, I got here at 5 o'clock, so I could ask questions.
Okay.
Hi. I have a bunch of concerns. I'm gonna try to wrap it into 1 question if that's possible, but I appreciate everybody being here. I really do. My house flooded in 2020 and I reached out to Senator Schwank's office and got basically the response of you should get sandbags. So we tried to acknowledge there was a problem with that stream on Laurel Run. I'm a little surprised. I was here in the meeting in July and we were asked to fill out forms, put information into the township. I've heard nothing. There's nothing on your website. This meeting isn't listed on your website. No one has gotten a hold of me. I got the verification that I listed myself on July 10th. I did it driving home from vacation. I've heard nothing about you applying to FEMA. I could contact representatives if I knew that process was underway. I've heard nothing about stream projects that are going on that might be impacting my house. There's 0 information being given. And I appreciate you guys being here, but it's been 2 months. And you guys haven't had to deal with every time it rains, canceling trips, canceling going out so I could sit at my house and make sure my house isn't gonna flood again. I purchased sandbags for my own house so I can prevent the creek from flooding my house a 3rd time. And I feel like we're hearing nothing. Now, maybe I'm not aware of it, but the last thing you posted under your emergency on your site is that we shouldn't boil water as of July 14th. So I think you've got very few people here compared to the people that are concerned about this because no one knew this meeting was happening. My neighbor texted me yesterday about it. That's the only reason I'm here, and I'm fortunate that I could be here tonight. But we're not getting information. And you may think that we are, and we're glad that you're doing something, but tell us what you're doing so we can help with that. I tried to contact the Burks out in Leesport, where you work, sir. I tried to contact them. They said they're not sure what we can help you with. I said, I don't know. I'm hoping my township is going to reach out to you for doing something with the waterway by my house. They said, okay, if we hear anything, we'll let you know. They haven't gotten back to me either. So I'm not quite sure how to respond to this or what my question is. But it's like, we don't know anything. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that feels that way. So, Mark Rossi did reach out to me. And the only reason I heard from him is because I know him personally. He asked me how I was doing. No one from the township came by, then the people that cut the grass across the street. I'm zero. Absolutely nothing. I've gotten 3 feet of water in my house twice from an overflow of the creek that floods Laurel Run Avenue, that floods my driveway, that floods my house. Thankfully, I have flood insurance. It's helped, but I have such a high deductible because of the cost of flood insurance, and it only covers structural because that's what I can afford. But I'm not rebuilding my basement. I can't. So I've lost 1/3 of my property's livable structure to this flooding. And, check the pipes and what pipes? I don't know what you want me to check. I got a call from the water company that told me they cleaned out the pipes 2 weeks later. Thanks. I don't know. I don't know that I even have a question. Just please provide us with information. Update something that we can find. Thank you.
What would be the feelings, and I don't know how to do this without getting disorganized, but what are the feelings of the folks in the room about what the best way to get that kind of information is? I fully accept that we failed. I'm not questioning your statement that you feel uninformed, but I would ask that you would accept that we have tried. I mean, for example, you spoke about the disaster declaration opportunity. It was in local media. It's on our Facebook page at the county. So I certainly understand that not everybody follows every means. What can we
But
do?
you collected the emails of the people who are affected. We included that information when we provided you with what happened to our homes. You had a way to contact us directly. We were directly impacted. We could have spoken up for ourselves. You had that information.
So you would desire a direct email communication to every person?
I think everybody would. If your home was affected, if you want to hear directly from them. And we were kind of told we would be. You guys came out with properties and said that you guys had contact.
I'm an IT guy and I know how the challenge of that. But even if it wouldn't take 10 minutes to put up a website for this storm at some municipality where all of the information is being consolidated by whomever's consolidated. Because that's part of the problem is, echoing him, you're just told to talk to the next, and eventually you run out of people to talk to, and you don't know where is the central. There's got to be a Berks County, a Pennsylvania site that all of this information should be consolidated. Granted, if you can send emails, but I understand the logistics of that.
Thank you.
For the sake of Mr. Nappy's comment, we'll go via the list that was signed when you signed in. If you're not interested in speaking, I know I spoke to a couple of people that said they weren't interested in speaking, then you just say, I don't have any comment to say. So next signed in was Joe Ramsco, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Ramsco, okay, I'm sorry.
I just have a couple comments to make. I don't know if all you know the location or how this stream or creek functions. I live at the corner of Mount Laurel and Mount Vernon. And as far as I see, this is where the flood starts going down Mount Laurel Road. It comes across out Rising Sun, fills up that intersection, normally comes halfway up my driveway, and then continues down the street. And then more water comes out on the mountainside, and it's a raging river. This happens at least once a year, as far as I know, and I've been living there for 45 years. Okay, and like I said, I'm one of the lucky ones. It only comes halfway up my driveway, but causing that usually destroys all my landscaping and my fence along the street. So every time this happens, it costs me some money to fix that all up. All right. Now this time it was extra bad. Something changed because I saw it happen. It was coming halfway up my driveway, and then there was a surge. There was a swell that happened for some reason, and the water came rolling towards me in my garage. So, till this was all over with, this is the first time in 45 years for me that I had a raging river going down the front of my house, down the back of my house. We got rescued out of there by Muhlenberg Township. Now, I don't know if any of you ever were in a flood. It's a terror thing to see a river going down the front and the back of your house. And I really think to some extent you need to experience this. And I wonder if you really did, would things change quicker? You know, because this could happen at any time. And it doesn't have to be hurricane season. God forbid we get a hurricane, we're gonna be really wiped out here. Because last night there was torrential rainfall, all right? People down the mountainside and back in Rising Sun, they're walking around with flashlights to see how far the water's coming up already. And that creek is so high now with debris and the stones and stuff, it's not gonna take anything for it to start to overflow. So everybody who lives in that area is just crazy. All right, like the other gentleman said, when we have bad storms or something, you can't go anywhere. You're you know, terrorized what's gonna happen next. So I really had substantial damage at my house this time, and I'm recovering from it. And like everybody else, and people down Mount Laurel, some of them were a lot worse off than me. They lost their houses, their cars. It's terrible. So you can spend all that time, all that money, get all the help you want, and it could happen next week. It can happen tomorrow again. That creek, stream, whatever you want to call it, you gotta dig about 50 feet out of that thing. So it will flow and it doesn't bind up at the bridge down Mount Laurel. It's just something to behold.
Do any engineers want to address that concept? Because we've heard that a lot about dredging the creek.
Well, before we get into dredging the creek, just from Muhlenberg Township's perspective and Mr. Naby's comment, I can't comment on the funding nor can the township officials. That's not where we can go. We put the form out there so you can complete it, apply for the corporate funding and encourage it. But as Jim mentioned, we already have 3 emergency permits we're looking at, and we're paying for our engineer to do a comprehensive study as quickly as possible for us to identify those pain points, why that's happening now, that it wasn't happening, a decade ago, and how we're able to fix that. But then we would have to go to our friends that are at this table and have them to approve the permitting process. Because what we don't want to do is make a mistake and spend a lot of money, because it's extremely expensive to do something that might just be a Band-Aid that doesn't fix the problem as a whole. So we already have Ms. Stevens somewhere, who's been tasked with the project and system design engineering to do a whole comprehensive study that the township's gonna pay for, then we can take the appropriate course of action. Believe me, we sit here and we're all talking on the phone and we feel for you when it rains, and we know, we don't want it to happen again either. But the only way we're gonna fix it and fix it appropriately is do it the right way, and we've already started that process. So correct me, Jim and Kevin, if I'm wrong, but just to say that we haven't, we're already engaged in how we fix so that you don't have a river coming down Mount Laurel and burn it. So it's just gonna take us some time to get there, and we have to depend on these folks to help us through that process. Okay, I don't know if anyone else has any comments, but that's from a township perspective. That's what we've been doing.
I don't know that we can add anything to that, and again, that's one of the reasons that we're here tonight, because we Muhlenberg Township did apply for the emergency permits. We want to hear your questions, and I know that we still have questions, so, the communication piece, obviously we can step up. Sometimes you have to go through an emergency to understand what you can do better, what you did right, what you did wrong, and where your improvements are. So for the communication piece, we're always looking for ways to improve our communication. But I thank you for your comment.
Okay, But just so you understand, every time there's torrential rainfalls or it rains for 2 or 3 days, even lightly, that groundwater builds up and that creek, stream, whatever you want to call it, is filling up. And it's filling up with more debris. So it's getting easier and easier for that to overflow the banks. And I know those poor people live back in Rising Sun, they're just bananas. So it's just progressively getting worse. And, you know, can't wait 8 or 9 years for something to be developed that we can help all those people. All right, thank you.
If it's okay if I just speak a little bit, I actually want to address everyone here. So while the township's trying to do their part and the county's trying to help along those lines, there's something that also comes into play that we also need your help. And this is something that I deal with every single day. So there are certain times where I actually have to go out into the communities and I have to perform audits to see what the townships and the boroughs are doing as far as the floodplain regulations. So when you're living in a floodplain, there's certain things that you can and cannot do to your property. And if you don't abide by those regulations that are there, you can actually make things worse in those streams. So when you're storing materials on your property and you're in a floodplain, whether it's wood piles or you have vehicles there that aren't running, you have sheds that aren't properly anchored and they don't have a flood vents and they're not elevated. That's actually causing a lot of issues that's contributing to that. So not only do you have your issue with the stream, but then you have all this additional debris and everything else that's going in there. So we want to make sure that, you know, the townships are doing their part, the state and counties are doing their part, but we also need you guys to do your part too. So if you do live in those floodplains, to abide by those regulations, you might not like it. You may say that, hey, it's my property. I want to be able to do what I can with it. But the problem is if everybody does this, this is what ends up happening. And this is what has occurred over the years in the Commonwealth. Flooding is the #1 risk in Pennsylvania, and it's all riverine. It rains on top of mountains. Where does it all go? It goes down the mountains right to the lowest areas. And those are the ones that you guys are the ones that are getting hit with this. So trying to take the additional steps as well on your part, whether it's, you know, you're getting 3 foot of water in your basement, elevate your utilities. Get them out of the way so that you don't have to worry about whether or not that flood water is going to hit them when they come. Yes, you're going to be losing some of that living space, but you're also protecting what your investments are. So your HVAC units, your water heaters, your utility supplies and everything else like that, keeping them elevated above where you know that water is going to go. You know, and there are times where the township's going to ask you to make sure that you have things elevated. Or if you have to elevate a structure, it has to be above the base flood elevation, not only just that base flood elevation, but it has to be a minimum of 18 inches above that. So these are the reasons that we have it in place, because emergency management, our #1 goal is saving lives. So we want to make sure that we're protecting that, not just coming off as telling you what you can and cannot do with your property. But there's a lot of contributing factors of it. So please understand that we do try to do our part. We try to work with the municipalities and the counties, but we also need help from the residents and those property owners as well. That this is why we have these regulations here, because they've been left go for so long and not. So now we're trying to get them all back in place, and it is hard. It does take time to try to get that resilience back up. But that's why we've been so stringent and so restrictive on what you can and cannot do with your property. So simple thing as putting a fence in. Your ordinances might not allow a fence to be put in, and might not allow a pool to be put in, because now we're just increasing the size of a footprint in a floodplain. So it's basically taking a cinder block and putting it in a bathtub. The water's gonna rise. So whatever you're doing in those floodplains, it's gonna affect everyone around you, whether it's upstream or downstream. So it's different things to kind of take into consideration. So, but if there's ways that we can help, we're more than happy to help. I just kind of want to give a little bit of that little background too, because it's hard when you haven't had flooding. And trust me, we all in emergency management, we get those calls. And trust me, I've been on vacation. When you guys actually got hit, I was on vacation and I was sending emails to the townships. I was up in the middle of the night getting the calls, sending out emails, trying to see where I could help, trying to get notifications out, seeing what they could do as far as checklists and everything else, and see how we could coordinate. So I do understand where you're coming from, and we've been out there on the field and we've been talking to the residents and everything. We do understand where you guys are coming from, But it is a long journey and it's not an easy one, but we're here to try to work with you as much as we can possibly can to try to work through that.
I'm very worried that a lot of people here believe that dredging of the creek bed is a solution to this problem. And I wish it were. I wish that would be an easy thing to do. You can get the permits, you can spend the money and fix the problems. I'm not a professional engineer. I hope somebody in the PennDOT, DEP, and Conservation District world is and can address this with absolute clarity. But I'm very worried that people will walk out of this room tonight believing that simply dredging 1,000 feet of creek bed is going to solve your flooding problem. It is not. And if you think about it logically, think about a river. And if you dug a swimming pool in the middle of the river, the water is going to fill up the new swimming pool that you dug on the bottom of the creek instantaneously. It's going to seek its own level. So unless you're able to literally dredge that 50 feet, Joe, all the way to the Schuylkill River, wherever the Laurel Run ends up in a larger waterway, you're not going to abate your flooding problem. Where it goes under bridges, through culverts, if you can clear those, make those openings larger, that's something that PennDOT dealing with all the time. When they replace the bridge, they replace the culvert, they're always meeting the newer standard for largeness to allow water to move through. But I really hope nobody walks out of here tonight believing that if the township is successful in getting permitting to dredge the creek, it's going to fix your flooding problem. Because that says to me that you're going to go home and say, okay, my problem's fixed. It's unfortunate it took this to get here, but at least my problem is resolved. It is not going to be resolved. You still need to be addressing all of the other issues of living in a floodplain. And I don't say this lightly. I recently moved, but I lived along the Schuylkill River. My house was flooded in 2006, and I forget which other storm, significantly from the Schuylkill River. I totally get what it is that you're dealing with, but I don't want anybody to lead with false impressions or falsehoods either. Is there anybody who can confidently address what I just said about dredging?
Yeah, I'm not an engineer by any means either, but, from past experiences and working with engineers, like Brian said, dredging is not the solution to the problem. In fact, it actually sometimes causes or significantly increases other problems within the watershed. Typically with these kind of situations, you need to take a holistic approach to a watershed. And determine exactly where these issues are arising from and what the impacts are. But just dredging 50 feet or 100 feet is not going to be the solution to the issue here.
Can I ask a question on behalf of the township? So what's the process then for us? Why can't we just go in and move debris?
You can remove debris to a certain extent within a waterway.
Because that's one of our major problems in the Temple area is all the debris. And I'm not an engineer, I just like trying to understand people, the misconception of dredging, but one of our problems, correct me, is the amount of debris we have down Mount Laurel.
Yeah, now there are limitations to what you can and cannot do when you are removing debris, but if it's debris that has basically clogged your waterway, you can remove that without a permit. If you plan to affect the floodplain or floodway in any manner, then you're gonna need an emergency permit through the Department of Protection.
How do we get clarification on what would classify as debris? We could go in and help.
You could call our office, or you could call the Department of Environmental Protection up in Harrisburg.
I actually have an email into end user.
Yes.
To clarify, he's the guy. So Dana, generally, anything you can do from the stream banks, anything you can do in the stream without powered or motorized equipment, it is allowable.
Yeah, you can remove, say, like a log jam or something like that, as long as you are not affecting the stream bed or the banks, altering those banks in any way.
They could actually reach down into the stream itself.
Yeah.
You can drag it out with chains, or you could have a backhoe lifting debris out, or pushing large trees, giving debris, things like that. As long as you don't take the heavy equipment down into the stream. Right. You are allowed to take small handheld. You are allowed to take small handheld equipment like chainsaws, shovels, saws, things like that down into the stream to take out that debris. One thing I'd like to point out is I left a bunch of brochures on the desk over here. They're free for anyone who would like to take them. is what you can do for street maintenance on your own property. What's allowable that you can do as a citizen without any type of permit. There's also what we call the red light, yellow light, green light. Green light means whatever's on the green light list in this pamphlet, you can do without any type of permit. If it's a yellow light listed on here, you should call DEP first to see if you can do that. Anything with the red light in here, you cannot do without a permit. So please take one of those, read it over, call our office if you have any questions. We'll be happy to answer these questions.
Thank you. Charles and Deborah Thrush.
Name's Charles Thrush. I live at 1100 block of Mount Laurel in Temple. One of the big things I say is you're all giving us a lot of information. Where can we reach you? I look at this, I see a lot of names, a lot of departments, but I have no idea where we can contact you at. Senator, I know where I can contact you at. So if we could find some way of getting the information on that.
We could post, we could update the web, tomorrow morning with everybody's office contact info, sure.
Okay. And you'd already addressed about removing debris, because there are 3 choke points within about 300 to 400 feet. There's a bridge where it crosses Mount Laurel on the street. There's a side bridge that crosses right above that, and that one is usually the worst, because I saw they had removed the debris from that before. And after the flood, it was just piled up again. Mountainside, which is right above that, is another choke point, and that fills up with debris. We have noticed, I've lived in the area for 45 years. And since they built the new areas above that, the water runs off and starts to come down and block off at the mountainside, and it starts coming down Mount Laurel before it even comes down, floods over on the creek now. So I don't know if there could be anything with gates above those or anything to try to collect debris before it gets to those areas and collect a little bit of debris above that. But those are our major points. And the side stream that had been originally there some 40 some years ago, that ran off over by Mountainside and came down by Morgani's and behind the club up at the corner of Commerce and Beaumont, was filled in because it was flooding the houses and the establishments there every time we had a flood. So that's gone. So you have another area where you've lost drainage. But I thank everybody, and hopefully you can do something about the debris and stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Terry Hurst,
Not at this time.
thank you. Kevin. Who was next? Who was after Terry? Kevin, LETLCHT maybe? No? Larry O'Boyle?
Hello, I'm Larry O'Boyle from Lower Alces Township. I live a half block from Stony Creek. I've lived there for over 35 years. We've had bad rains before. Without a doubt, that bridge replacement construction caused a good percentage of what damage was occurred during the flood. I've seen lots of rain, I know it. But besides that, it was the water coming down, the block behind me and around me was like a river. I've been to a lot of meetings. I'm the president of Antietam Valley Community Partnership. We've gone to COAD, NOAD, so many letters I don't remember anymore. And every time I go to these meetings, I come in hopeful and I leave even more frustrated than when I came. I hear, all I hear is, you don't meet the threshold, the money's not available, we can't do anything, we're still waiting to hear. I think it's just the frustration by a lot of the people, but me and members of my community. We're waiting for this, the federal government has basically said no. We're waiting for the state government to say something about helping us. The community itself, the grassroots people of Antietam did a lot of work. People got out there and helped clean up. We had a fundraising spaghetti dinner. We raised money. We gave out gift cards to help people. The grassroots people helped the most. We're still waiting to hear from the state for help. And last meeting I was at, they said there would be help, and they're gonna set it up at Alvernia in the city of Reading for low interest loans. I don't even know what that. And I suggested they have it locally at our farmers market, Antietam Farmers Market, which is twice a month, which would get people there easier, because some of the people who are affected are senior citizens, handicapped, and don't have that means of transportation to get to these places in Reading. It might seem like it's central to you, but if you have no car, you can't get there. They can walk to where the place would be at. My only question would be, how long do we have to wait to hear anything about permits and funding? It's like, we're waiting to hear, it's 2 months. That's my question. How long should we have to wait? Or are we just gonna because we have churches that have come out to help. UCC, Lutheran churches, they all come in, the grassroots and private sector have come out and helped these people. And we're waiting for the deep pockets of the state and federal government to help us. And we're still waiting. That's my only question. How long must we wait?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with anything outside of Muhlenberg, so I'd have to defer to anybody.
I'll be that next. So, first of all, I do want to correct a couple of things. You made the statement that the federal government has said no. That is not correct. We are still waiting for an answer on the federal disaster declaration.
Okay.
Just a minor detail too, the plan, if we're responsible for finding a centralized location that the feds can come in and open up a disaster recovery center in the event that we get this disaster declaration. The plan is to open that at all right, not over yet. And we need to do that. I understand that it's not central to your neighborhood, but think about if we did it in your neighborhood, what it would mean to the folks that were flooded along the Willow Creek or the Laurel Run. So we really tried to look at the damage that happened in an area after an event and locate the DRC at a place that is central to all of the damage. I mean, I would love if we could have 10 DRCs. It just doesn't work that way. The feds will send so many people, the state will send so many people, and generally there's one DRC. Sometimes they do what are called mobile DRCs, where they will take, for lack of a better term, mobile home around and go into communities to give those types of opportunities. We certainly will advocate for that. We always do, but I can't promise you that will happen. I can't answer your question, how long? I honestly don't know. I said very honestly in my introductory comments, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've never seen a declaration request take this long to get a yes or a no answer. So I honestly can't answer your question, how much longer we have to wait. I can tell you, we are all as equally concerned about it and make outreach, inquire about what's going on. As I said, we're trying to get advocacy from the federal delegation. I would encourage you folks to reach out and respectfully ask for that also. It certainly can't hurt, but I can't give you an answer to when.
You're right. Well, Larry, thank you for everything you've done in terms of the community partnership. That organization has done a lot before flooding and will afterwards. It's made a real community down there. I notice it. I've been down there a lot. And certainly from the standpoint of the flooding that happened there, the Secretary of PennDOT was out there twice to look at that. And the project director is still there. If you feel that was, the problem, I can't say that it was or it wasn't, but I'd be glad to make sure that you have the opportunity to sit down and talk with him about, how the project was proceeding. I mean, certainly, I got to tell you, I've been at Antietam High School at least 3 years in a row because of the flooding that they have had there. So it's not the first time that that happened, and that was before the construction. Might have been worse, I can't answer that, it was horrible. I never knew
Yes.
the power of water till I saw what I saw down there. Asphalt, streets torn up, cars moved, 50 feet, it was unbelievable, it truly was. So we can do that, and I'll be glad to set that up with you, we can talk after the meeting to do that. But we have given money to the school, as I said, in terms of trying to do something to help mitigate, those old walls of that creek. Never could hold, they just couldn't hold up to the amount of water that has been coming through. So both I and Representative Rossi have given them money to do that. We even got them money this year to help for security for the high school.
Yes.
The doors of the school, many of you aren't from there, they were literally buckled because of water coming in. You talk about school security, there was no way that you could possibly keep that school secure with the damage that had been done before. So we had money allocated for that. We can't even use it now because we're trying to direct it for other things for the school. So in terms of the funding that will be coming, certainly we hope that it will happen for the homeowners, but also we lost the high school and rebuilding that school. If it can't be used, and it seems to me, I wouldn't certainly invest any money in putting a school back where the one currently is. So it'll be in multi-million dollars for sure, right?
Mhm.
So we're following it very closely, and we are also putting the pressure on in terms of trying to get answers, because the school district needs answers as well. So I certainly hear what you're saying. If I can bring any level of information by getting, the PennDOT project manager there, I'm happy to do that. But that's where we're at right now.
Yes, I know that I was on the school board for 14 years.
Yeah.
I know about the project. It was put on hold because of trout spawning. It
That
had-
I did know, okay.
That's what I heard. I'm not on the board any longer, but that's why it was put on hold during the trout spawning season. And the blocks are there to taper that back and everything. It was just, that would have helped a great deal.
But I would just ask you to consider it again, maybe PennDOT can weigh in on this. No restoration of the stream bank of the Antietam Creek is going to lower or stop future flooding. You can build those stream banks out of 10-inch thick steel plate. They're not going to erode. They're going to be safer after the flood because they're not going to be a big mess, but they're not going to change the level of the water. And I would even ask you to think about the bridge project. If PennDOT would have built a new bridge downstream from the community and made it a very small pass through that the water got backed up behind, it would be sensible to blame that bridge project for flooding the community. But PennDOT took out a bridge, opened up a waterway. It's inconceivable that action resulted in higher flooding in the community.
The corrugated pipes got clogged with boulders and it backed up. And then it went to the path of least resistance, which was Marshall Avenue.
Downstream, you mean, not at the bridge project.
Right at the bridge project.
Right, but what I'm trying to convey, and I don't think I'm doing a very good job, it's kind of like the dredging thing. Going down doesn't solve flooding. Going up can solve flooding in the local area. It moves the flood downstream to make it somebody else's problem. That's the unfortunate side of the reason that it's regulated and has to be permitted. But, the corrugated pipes getting backed up. At some point in time, the flood water was above those corrugated pipes. And that wasn't a problem for the community. It was when the flood waters rose above the level of the creek then, above the level of the creek wall, the natural flow, that it created a problem. And it really is because there was significant rainfall in the headwaters of the tributaries of the Antietam Lake.
Yes, the plan was to widen the creek, have more volume.
Right.
And to get it past the school, past the community, and then downstream more, then.
But if you don't do that all the way to the end, eventually that water hits the point where your dredging project, your widening project didn't go to, and fills up. It's like, imagine if you dug out the Schuylkill River from Birdsboro to Reading. It would do nothing to change flooding on the Schuylkill River because you eventually, well, not even eventually, in moments, that what you dug out would be full. The level of the river would look just like it does today. Nobody would even be any wiser that you dug out or widened that creek, right? If you don't do it all the way to the point that there's no longer backflow resistance to the water, which probably in this case would be the Schuylkill River, you would really achieve nothing during the flood.
Maybe we can move on from this. But I am happy, Larry, to help in terms of, if you need more answers about it, we can make that happen.
Larry, I have a real quick question for you. You
Sure.
mentioned something about permits. Is your municipality not processing permits? You said something about permits being held up.
You all were talking about.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't, I wanted to make sure it wasn't.
No, we had, the school district had permits to do the job they're gonna do. It was all permitted out and everything.
Okay.
We're all, that's good, but other permits about Muhlenberg cleaning out and we're waiting.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't any floodplain permits for development or something that were held.
Not that I'm aware of,
For any
no.
type of repairs and stuff.
No,
That's what I just
no.
wanted to just make sure on clarification of that.
No.
All right, thank you.
Robert Parker?
Hello, everyone. I'm also with ABCP. I was given the opportunity to create a flood relief committee for ABCP, and of course, then I became the chairman. We've been trying our best to talk to the people that have been affected, because a lot of these people really got affected pretty bad. We've been going door to door. We've been giving out gift cards. There's another group called ART, and this is 6 women who got together and just went beyond the call of duty. Now, what I heard from these women when they sat down and met with some people is they were, I hate to try to find better words for this, but it was almost like they were disciplined, or they were told that what they did wasn't in the best way to do it. And I just want to make sure, whoever it was that was in that meeting, I think it was the emergency group from Berks County. But what I heard from one of the people in that group of people that she felt like she was being yelled at. I don't know. I wasn't at the meeting. I just heard this. I just want to make sure, because we're going to continue to do this work, because we're continuing to get donations for these people, and we're continuing to talk to them and trying to make sure that these people are taken care of. There's a huge trailer park that got hit, the whole trailer park, 100 trailers. And this trailer park is not exactly a high-end trailer park. Best way to put it. So I just want to make sure if we go forward on this, that we have the green light to keep doing the philanthropic things that we're doing.
I don't think anybody can stop you from doing that from Muhlenberg Township's perspective. I don't think anybody can stop you from doing those things. I think that when you have those meetings, I recommend that the people that you send to those meetings be educated enough to be able to have those conversations and
yeah, this would be this is Antietam, this is not.
Yeah, right.
But I don't know if you were in that meeting.
No, as a matter of fact, I was going to mention that we knew nothing about those efforts and believed that we were going to be meeting with that group for the first time tonight. And actually asked Pastor Duquette to cancel that meeting.
Okay.
In the interest of this meeting. So I think that.
So there is not a problem for us to keep doing what we're doing. As far as being good citizens of the community.
I can't imagine why anybody would object. I mean, again, one of the first things that we do is encourage family and individual planning, and then community planning. Call it church, community groups, whatever. So those are exactly the kind of things that are encouraged.
That's fine.
So you're just handing out gift cards, you're not like doing any type of work or anything along the places?
Not at this point, no. Not at this point. Now, if indeed that would come up, what are the guidelines there?
You always have to make sure that before you do anything to any property or land within a floodplain, that you have an approved permit first. So you have to go through that municipality.
Okay,
Now, it's up to the municipality on whether or not they waive fees, but they'll never waive permits, not in the floodplain whatsoever.
okay,
So you always want to make sure before anything is altered or done, or repairs, that you have a permit in place.
okay. Now, I'm gonna break the rule. I've got this small second question, and I think everybody else in the room is thinking about this. The ownership of waterways, when does it start? What size does a creek or a stream have to be that the ownership switches from whoever owns the land to? Just, I mean, if it's a long answer, but I just thought I'd throw it out there because I'm sitting here thinking, okay, what the responsibility of that water and the speed of that water, it falls on everybody because water's coming from everywhere, but when does the responsibility of government take over those waterways? Thank you.
Well, that's a little bit of a complicated question because the waters are waters of the Commonwealth. Or whether that's an unnamed tributary or body of water the size of the Schuylkill. And again, it's complicated because the state could own the underlying surface of that stream, or it could be private property. I don't know if, I don't think that the Commonwealth is responsible for damage from the water coming up because it's just stormwater. It's an act of God.
While it's a complicated, big picture legal question, can we conclusively say that to the interest of the people in the room, those on the Willow Creek, those on the Laurel Run, those on the Antietam Creek, they're all private. No, we know that none of that is separated out from their deed. They're the stream, the creek, whatever you want to call it, is on their property. It's in their ownership, but how they own it, how they manage it has to conform with state law.
That is correct. That's a very good way to do that.
Thank you. Patricia and Charles Michelle.
Quick question to direct at the municipality. And it's somewhat, I know you seem to go to great length to distance yourself from the water and sewer authority. But is anything being done with that to work on alleviating the sewer backups when we have these rainfalls?
There are. The water authority is working. They've already performed some investigation, specifically, I know in Riverview Drive area. But there are other steps being taken to look at those sewer issues, yes. From the water authority's perspective.
Any time frame or what they?
You have to attend one of their meetings. Sorry, there's your distance. Sorry.
I'm seeing the foot upgrade.
Yeah,
I understand, but
we don't.
they're in the municipality, so they do affect us all.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Sue Swavely.
Hi, I thank you all for being here. I live at 1213 Riverview Drive. Riverview Drive is what Mr. Malinowski was just talking about. I lived on the river, on the Schuylkill River. I have river frontage property. I've lived there for 32 years tomorrow. I was one of the original owners in Eagles Landing Development. Never had a drop of water in I have a bi-level, so I don't have an underground basement. I have a walkout basement. Never had a drop of water in my basement until August 2nd or 3rd of 2020 when I had a sewage backup. Well, it was a once in a 100-year event. Equipment was working, not to worry. Fast forward to July 9th, guess what happened? So I'm down $50,000+ because my entire lower level was ripped up and still is not fixed. Okay, so I'm working on that now. I have a couple issues. Emily, just a quick question for you, not a question, just if you would mind looking into something. And this is unrelated to the sewage backup. The floodplain designation in Eagles Landing for some of the river frontage people has not been changed since the Felix Dam was breached. And I don't know why, and it should have been. So that's something, and I can give you my neighbor, Jack Pennington, especially interested in this, and he was unable to be here. He had an issue tonight, so I can give you his name and number if you could look into that and get So information. one of the things when you're dealing with mapping is in order for mapping to be changed, there can be an entity that actually has the H&H study done. You can reach out to the Army Corps, and the county can do that. Reaching out to the Army Corps to have a study done to see about possibly changing it. When FEMA goes out and does their map revisions, typically it's because they've seen a boost in certain things. They've seen like really strange flooding events and everything where they'll go out and relook at a certain area as far as to see how it's mapped. It could be outdated maps. We know that there's a lot of development in general, but when they do their mapping updates, it's not just something that's simply done. It's not just something that they do off of a one-time event. When they're doing their mapping, it takes a minimum of 5 to 6 years in order to go and do the LiDAR and what they need to get all the data that they need. There's something that we do at discovery meetings. We go out to municipalities in the counties and ask them, okay, here are the maps of the areas that we're looking at studying, and the state is involved when FEMA does this. Where are the troubled areas that you're aware of in your jurisdictions to make sure that they're looking at that as well? But unfortunately, it does take a long period of time. It's been a while since it was breached, and Jack would have more information than me, but there's people required to buy flood insurance when there may not be a need to do so. And keep in mind, just because you're not in a floodplain, and I can't reiterate this enough, just because you're not in a floodplain doesn't mean you're not gonna flood. If I could just ask a real quick question of everyone, who here lives in an actually FEMA designated floodplain? Who here has flood insurance? That's part of my concern right there. Unfortunately, no matter where you live, you can pick up flood insurance. It doesn't, and while I am under the NFIP program, I don't care if it's NFIP or if it's private. I just want people to have flood insurance because unfortunately in these kinds of events, that's the only thing that's gonna make you whole in the slightest. And whether or not you're in or outside of it has no bearing on as far as getting flood insurance. If anybody has ever talked to an insurance agent and they told you that you can't get it, please go talk to someone else. That is incorrect in every which way possible. It doesn't matter if you're a renter, you're a condo owner, you live in a townhome, you can get renters and you can get the flood insurance because your renter's insurance isn't gonna cover it, your homeowner's insurance is not gonna cover it. But you need to get that flood insurance if there's any type of possibility of you being able to see that. And trust me, I mean, I actually got a quote for living in a 3rd floor apartment to see exactly what it would be because I was a little bit concerned on how it was gonna affect me. The creek that I live near ends up going, if it's gonna take out my power and everything else. But I mean, the mapping things, one of the things that we are addressing within the past couple years is when PennDOT is actually doing their projects, the studies and their engineering things, we're actually looking for those H&H studies, which is hydraulics and hydrology. We're looking for those studies to be submitted to FEMA so that they can include those in their map updates. So they can actually see, okay, this culvert's been increased. There's been a bridge put in. That's part of the thing that we've been working on, and FEMA has taken over the floodplain management program in 2019 is when it was taken over. So before it was economic and community development. So now it's moved over to emergency management. So we're getting a lot more involved than what was done previously. And I actually report to the state hazard mitigation officer as well. So looking at those projects and everything, and we are very concerned about some of the areas. But what we're seeing is change in how the waters are flowing. So you're getting these strange storm cells that are stalling out, and there's a lot of contributing factors of it, you know. It could be a lot of blacktop all of a sudden. If you think about the amount of heat that it throws off, think about it throwing up in the atmosphere. It's gonna make storm cells kind of sit and spin a little bit more than what they would have previously. The more green we have, the better off we are. It absorbs it into the ground. But these strange storm cells that are moving through, we didn't have those in the past. I know alone the amount of the storms that we would get in the winter, the snow, we're not getting the same anymore. I remember when I was a kid, the drifts that we would see in the area that I lived in, and I lived in the middle of a bunch of farmlands. We're not seeing those type of storms. What we are seeing is these really strange little things that are coming through. So the weather's changing. I understand that, but like I said, for 30 years, I saw we had, something changed because
we went through the Hurricane Floyd and the storm of 2017 or 18, not a drop of water. So something changed, which brings me to PennDOT. We had a representative from, thank you, Emily. I'll have my neighbor call you.
Yeah, that's not a problem. If you go to the FEMA website under floodplain management, you're gonna find contact information.
Okay, thank you. We had a representative, Eagles Landing ends in a cul-de-sac. In the middle of the cul-de-sac is a pathway to pumping station. The 3 houses above the pumping station now all have flood waters running through the backyard. And then the 3 of us below the pumping station have sewage backups. Since PennDOT changed some drainage, cut down trees on the road to nowhere, and yes, I still call it road to nowhere. Cut down trees and changed some drainage up on the road to nowhere, right by the 3rd neighbor's property. So now, the pathway that goes to the pumping station, it used to have a trail down a hill to the trail, the public trail behind our homes. Now it's just, you can't walk that path. It's just washed out. So there was a PennDOT representative at the neighbors' homes that have the river flowing behind it, and they acknowledged that, yes, that could have caused what their problems, because it didn't happen until that they made those changes, PennDOT made those changes. But they suggested, instead of fixing what they did, they suggested cut down more trees and plant more grass, which, you know, really disrupts our neighbors' properties and the privacy from the road to nowhere. So I don't know why it can't just be fixed. My other question, I'm gonna bounce to the EPA and the DEP. My husband placed phone calls after the second sewage backup, and nobody returned any calls. So I know I'm not Boscov's, I know I'm not Giant, I know I'm not Target, I'm just a lowly homeowner. But I would think raw sewage in somebody's home would elicit the same type of emergency as at a Boscov or a Giant or a Target, and I got nothing. Nobody returned any calls. So, like I said, I'm still fixing my problem, and like people said, every time it rains, I'm running in the middle of the night, I'm running downstairs, taking everything off the floor. I shouldn't have to live that. I should not have to live that.
Please see me up today. I'll get you back. Or I'll give you mine.
Thank you.
Amanda Ashman,
No question at this time, thank you.
Diane and Dennis Mulholland. David Duquette. Dean, oh, you just signed in. Brian and Brenda Makowitz. I'm Brian, live in 5026 Forest Avenue. Brought some pictures and it's not just me I'm speaking for my neighbor across the street, in front of me. This is our 3rd time in 10 years of being flooded. And in that time, I've lost about 60 feet of land from Laurel Run. And I am one of the ones that you guys are gonna come through and do whatever, you know, dig it out, whatever. I just want you to look at them, because it's very frustrating to come home from vacation and watch water come 100 feet and be 2 foot from your house, and can't do anything about it. Yeah, I don't know if anyone sitting here has went and helped their neighbor knee high water because their parents are in the basement and it's flooded and they don't know what to do. It's tough, and I'm trying to hold back my emotions because I just want to yell and scream because there's no support. I took the day off after from work. I called your office and I got to run around, call this place. I called your office all the way up to Shapiro. And the last person I talked to, call 911 and report. That's what I got. And you know what? If it wouldn't be for a friend of mine who used to be the police, fire chief in Galvazonia, hey, do this, screw what they say, this is what you have to do, I wouldn't be here today. And I knew nothing about this. And I'm sure if you ask everyone up and down Laurel Run Creek, has anyone showed up to our doors to, hey, are you okay? This is what we're wanting to do for you. I know personally, I worked up the street at a mushroom farm. I was there to assess their damage to their boiler, and they did not have a driveway behind their building. When I showed up to do my job, that was filled back in. Now, how is that fair to me that I can't touch my property, but because there's a business, they can do what they want? Has anyone, I'm asking, has anyone gone from, the truth of the matter is they shouldn't have done what they did. But then this is my question. Is anyone from the township driving up Mount Laurel Road and checking to make sure that other people are doing what they're supposed to? To somebody's comment previously, unfortunately, we have three code staff, three people in our codes department that are out and about on a regular basis that would be aware of permits that were issued to create a driveway. So we rely on the neighbors to be able to tell us. I've had several conversations with several, I mean, at least one of them is here in this room now, where we saw this. Great, thank you. We call the conservation district and we report that to the conservation district. Talked to another guy tonight that said, hey, I noticed this over the weekend. It's like, man, we got to know about it when it's happening, because the creek is running clear today. It's not muddy anymore. So the creek's not clear today. I went out of my house this morning and it was just like that day that it flooded. And that was at 4:30 this morning. If that's a result of erosion and sediment from upstream, that's one thing. But if it's a result from somebody performing work in the creek, that's a whole other thing. And that's where the conservation district comes into play. So again, we were made aware of land clearing that was done at the corner of Brush Valley Road and Mount Laurel Road. Yep. Our code staff went out. Our code staff did not have an erosion and sediment control on file from the conservation district. We stopped the operation. We issued cease and desist orders. The conservation district was contacted and they're working through that process. But now, my other thing, I lost 3 sewer pipes that stood up 4 feet in my yard because some guy up the creek from me had 3 or 4 5-foot plastic culverts to access his property on the other side of the creek. I sustained damage from that, and I had to pay to have someone come and clean my sewer out. And where does all this stuff go? It goes down the creek. And someone mentioned that they saw a surge in the water. I saw it too, as soon as that 5-foot culvert cleared my neighbor's property and went through her fence. Because at the bottom of the hill on Forest Avenue, that bridge is right on a 90-degree turn. My neighbor and her 2 parents watched that water come up 8 feet. That water was over top of the bridge. All because of other people's neglect. And I'm not saying it's anything here, but also you have the hill up there. I feel that that's something that the township should have went and looked at. How is just driving up the road, and I'm a nobody, and I look off and I see this. Right up the street, past that mushroom house I'm talking about on Mount Laurel, the hill comes straight down. You can see that at least 20 or 30 feet high of that washed down into the creek. And there is a resident here that happened on their property, and they're working with Mark for the repairs of that property. Unfortunately, I believe that's just over the line in Alice's Township, but we talked about that this afternoon as well. So I guess my personal question is, what can I do about, or what is going to be done about the almost 100 feet worth of property that I lost because my house isn't 50 feet from the creek. My sewer isn't 20 feet from the creek. You know, it's nice. It's nothing against anyone. You guys sit up here, you hear complaints. You're not living it. You may live next to water, you're not living it, you're not paying taxes on something that you lost 60 to 100 feet of. And there's no answers. I think between Ed and Dean with DEP and the Conservation District and Mark's, the grant program that he's running, that he's got a couple of Muhlenberg residents that are already receiving that grant funding and a few from other municipalities. But I think between Mark, I can't answer the question, how do you get your land back? But Mark can talk about, or he can offer you information on how you go about applying for funding to be able to preserve what you have there. And then my next thing would be for PennDOT. If you get a chance, come down Forest Avenue, and in that second picture, they stayed in order. You can see the bridge and where it was washed out for the second time after the township fixed it last time, where they filled it in with concrete and rocks, that it is washed out. If this happens again, how long until everything is gone around that bridge and pushes through? Because it's not just Forest Avenue that floods, it's Rising Sun, it's Fish Street, and it landlocks everyone in there. And you know what? If I wouldn't have talked to my coworker who used to be the fire police or the chief in Robizonia, he made a phone call and he had their people or whoever he talked to come out and drive by the house to make sure that me and the neighbors were okay. But until that time, I felt like we were there by ourselves. No one cared. So, and that's all I have to say. I mean, but I'm speaking for myself and everyone that's up from Mount Laurel. And as far as like the sandbars tonight from that rain just last night, my neighbor had almost 8 inches of water in their yard on the other side of the creek. And Brian, that's the problem with doing just something as basic as the sandbar removal, right? When we remove that, when any material is removed from within the creek, that material has to be stored outside of the floodplain, the floodway. It cannot be stored on the banks, bless you, where you would think that it should be put back to where it came from. Yeah, but that's not the case. It needs to be removed, and it needs to be stored off-site that is outside of the floodplain and floodway. And then question for you, I do have flood insurance and I did call FEMA. Is there anything I can do to have their assistance in this matter?
So as far as your flood insurance, it's not gonna cover your land, it's not gonna cover any landscape or anything like that. It's only gonna cover your structure and your contents. So if you have your home insured, for the structure, it'll cover anything that's damaged with that. The content would be specific for that structure. If you have additional accessory buildings, you would need separate ones for that then as well. For the cover, but will not cover anything in regards to landscape or any of your land as far as that, it would not cover. There's no insurance that actually would. That was a question that had come up a couple times now, because people are concerned about, you have to put a lot of money in the landscape, and trust me, I did landscaping for a period of time. I know that there's a lot of money that goes into that. But there's not an insurance for it.
Okay. And one of the Army Corps of Engineers was through our property back in like 05, 06-ish and re-engineered thing across the creek. They have bigger boulders. I don't know if that's something that can be done on our side as well. I'm okay with my land I'm not naive to it. The water has to go somewhere. I mean, but I sat in my sunroom and I watched the goddamn rising sun with 4 feet, 6 feet of water pushing against his house. And if it's something that can be done to help, not just me, but my neighbors. I know the gentleman said that it happens down farther, but it hits us before it gets down to rising sun, down mountainside and into Temple itself. And the township's engineer is working on that plan. It's only been about 3 weeks that they've had it. And talk to Mark before you leave tonight and get some of the information that he has, because that can help with that, that entire process as well. Thank you. Thank you. Sue Rockley.
First of all, I just want to thank you all for coming and telling us what you're trying to do. I live on North Temple Boulevard, and I did not have the horrific flooding that my neighbors all and stuff did. But I just want to say, I moved there in 1994. The weekend I moved in watching all of my neighbors in that block on North Temple having their basements cleaned out of sewer backup. So this is an ongoing issue, and I've watched it now for 30 years, 30 plus years, get worse. Obviously, that July storm was one of the worst ones that we ever had, but the part of the problem is that this township has no stormwater management. My corner has 2 stormwater drains. There's only 2 other ones on all of North Temple Boulevard. They just did the corners, redid those, dug those up to do the handicap because North Temple Boulevard is supposed to be repaved this year. And they made the storm drains even smaller. What sense does that make? My intersection floods so bad because, as you all said, water finds the lowest spot. All the water from Kutztown Road, because there's no storm drains on Kutztown Road, comes to North Temple Boulevard, rushes down. My corner is the only one that has a large storm drain. Some of the water goes in there, not all of it can make it in there. The water that does go in there crosses under the road and comes up in the middle of 7th Avenue, the block beside it. Pours out of there, rushes down to Darby, turns the corner, and then creates all the flooding on Darby, which we know the storm, the sewer, the manholes pop up, the sewage is all over the place. I mean, the township sees this. It's not just a creek problem, is what I'm saying. Is there's no way for this water to move anywhere. I have watched in my basement get damper and damper and damper. A few years ago, I finally had to have French drains and sump pumps put in because the groundwater now comes up so high when we have these events. Never had that for 25 years in my basement. And now it's like that because the water just pools there and just sinks down in. I know we've got sinkholes all over the area. That's probably part of the problem that the water collects there in the limestone. But you said you have an engineer looking into a plan. I hope he's not just looking at the creeks because
She's looking at all of it, but I'll ask you one question. When was your house built? Do you know?
25.
1925? And in 1925, I can tell you that stormwater was not a concern, right? In 1925, the subdivisions were designed that the streets and the curbs were themselves the stormwater conveyances.
Yeah,
That's
gotta go somewhere.
That's correct, and it flows downhill, right?
Right.
Right.
And that happens to be our intersection there at
Yep.
7th Avenue. It's 3 ways of downhill that
Yep.
comes there.
Right.
And we have a speeding problem, which is another thing. Every night when it rains, like last night, I hear these speeding cars and trucks hit that water.
The police
Yeah.
chief's in the back of the room.
Yeah.
He's hearing it all.
And they hide the plane. It's just a matter of time until one of them ends up in my living room. I've had trucks on my porch, not because of the water, but just because of that crazy intersection. But I'm just saying that please, when you look at this, and I know I've talked to other people, it's like, yeah, I know that dredging is not the thing to do to creeks. I've heard that. My sister's an environmental engineer and all that kind of deal. That's not just where the problem is. The problem is that there's no way for the water to distribute itself. And as Judy said, development. I mean, look how much the mountain's been developed. I mean, there's apartment buildings up there that never were there. There's housing develops, all that blacktop, all that hard surface just pushes more of that water off. It used to all be, agriculture up there, and now it's not. And none of that was taken into consideration. So all that water again comes downhill. We've had the library flood, we've had, with sewer and water, and we've had Fifth Street Highway. I'm sure the police and the fire department would love not to have to do water rescues on Fifth Street Highway every time we have rain. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's time to look at a bigger picture, not just the streams. Please help these people that are getting flooded out of their houses. I can't imagine how horrible that was with the water rescues. But the whole township is suffering from this. And, it's not going to get any better. Like I said, I've watched it get progressively worse over 40 years, and something's got to be done with it now. I'm just saying, it's the whole township needs to be looked at, is what I'm saying. So,
Then the engineer's in attendance and she'll look at it. I just make a quick announcement. We're a little over halfway through. And we have a page left here, so I don't mean to minimize what anybody has to say, but if you have a question, if you can ask that question and in an attempt to get through everybody on the list before the panel has to leave for the night. Next is Rich Michael.
No question.
No. Carrie Cox. No. No.
Okay, this won't be like last time, who's up here trying to check, okay? I will stick to one question. I do want to thank all you guys for finally getting together and trying to help us out a little bit with a little bit more communication, even though I think you guys could have did better. Again, I learned about this meeting through my job, that you guys were having a meeting today on September 11th, and then from my neighbor. The last thing that was posted on the website was, about the water boil. So if you guys, you asked a question, how can you contact us more? Well, at least put it on the website,
It is listed under the new business section of the website.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I don't know when you put it up, but I just learned about it like, I don't know, 5 days ago. So my biggest question is right now, I know they touched base on storm drains, things like that. You guys touch base on, it's a no-no with the water authority. So I do know our sewer and our water goes through the water authority. So where is it that you guys actually step in and speak with them about our drainage system? And so things like that.
We are having conversations with them, and action has been taken and will continue to be pursued. Yeah, we are having conversations with them.
I mean, what's the big no-no? I mean, do you guys just not get along, or
No,
what's going on?
So they are, well, hang on, they are an authority. They are created under the Municipal Authorities Act of 1935.
Okay,
Muhlenberg Township is a first-class township, created in 1966. So they are their own, they have their own fee structure, they have their own governing body, they have their own staff, their own payroll. They are not another government, well, they are a government entity. They are not another level of government. They're not another township, but they are their own governing body. They were created by the Municipal Authorities Act that provides them the authority to set their rates and maintain their infrastructure.
okay, that I
So
understand.
they are, it's like us telling Laureldale Borough that they need to do something. We don't have the authority to tell them they need to do that.
And I'm only asking because I'm originally from Ocean City, Maryland, so I do understand the power of water, okay? It did take 6 minutes from the time it hit my curb to the time it went into my first floor of my house on Mount Laurel Avenue, okay? Some of you guys have seen the pictures, some of you guys have seen the video. I've had no reach out to me. I've had nobody contact me via email, phone. I've contacted your office. I've contacted Mark Rossi's office. I've contacted DEP. I've contacted about other people, and everybody gives me the runaround. So my biggest thing is for you guys to communicate with the public. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what's going on with FEMA. The last email I got was they're trying to hit the $23 million mark. I mean, yeah, they gave me a number, but what does it look like for us? Anything like that. Communication. That's all I'm saying. Okay, and I did want to ask about the water authority and the township, because at some point, I thought we all worked together. But whenever it comes to drainage, like I said, I lived 18 years on Mount Laurel Avenue. There's 2 drainage. And I'm not trying to be mean, but you guys, it took to go through St. Marco, during the St. Marcos Festival. That's when they decided to go out there with the big thing and drain the thing.
Actually, we did that as a result. The township was there performing that cleanup.
Okay, so how many weeks after the thing, and you waited until St. Marcos?
That's not the township's responsibility to maintain catch basins and storm drains that are on a state highway.
Okay,
They're-
I'm just saying,
There's a
everybody needs to
separation
work
of
together.
duties as well, sure.
Okay, and you guys need to have more communication, and I think that's the biggest issue with everybody here. Communication. I know I've heard things from all different areas. You guys are still a little confused on each other's stuff. Again, I don't have flood insurance, and I was taken out of the flood zone 8 years ago. Okay, I was told I couldn't get flood insurance, but whatever.
Yeah, and see, that's.
But I was
the
taken out
misconception
of the
that
flood zone
we've been
8 years ago, so
this has been an ongoing problem. Even if I did have flood insurance, I have over $50,000 for the damage done through landscape, through underneath my sidewalks, through underneath my porch. Okay, even if I had flood insurance, it wouldn't cover it. So that's me. I just want that.
Can I say something before you walk away? First of all, I totally agree with you about the communication. We should have had that meeting long ago and been here. But you need to know when you call our office, I don't have a workforce to go out and do anything per se.
Oh, I wasn't asking you to go out.
What we do is we follow up with the township. We, because we're here, whether it's here or whether it's in Lower Alice, wherever it may be. And we'll also contact the state officials. We're in constant contact with Ed and with, some of the other folks around here on the table. But if I'm remiss in not getting back to you and saying that's what we did, I apologize for that.
Okay.
But sir, I totally understand where you're coming from. It does sound like nobody even cares.
It was,
or
I
knows. We
contact
do
somebody, they sent me to somebody, they send me to somebody, or I didn't even get contacted back at all. It's
I
kind of,
hear what you're
it's frustrating,
We
especially
can
when we
always-
go through the damage that we went through. So it's very frustrating, and I know I'm not the only one suffering, and I know more people got worse off than I did,
Right.
and I feel for them. But communication is a big issue, and I think that's what pisses everybody off.
I hear it. I think everybody else at the table hears it loud and clearly too.
So,
In terms of what we can do going forward, we'll continue to find the resources. If any of these projects that they're talking about with engineering, whether it's federal or whether it's state funds, we'll do whatever we can. I'm speaking for Representative Razi and the other, representatives in the area as well. We'll do what we can to help facilitate that. But the leadership does have to come from the communities. We can't tell them what to do. We can't tell school districts to merge. We can't, we can't make things happen. That's what Pennsylvania is, a commonwealth. So it's local government that does, has that authority and responsibility. And Jim did a good job of explaining what an authority is and how you can't tell authorities what to do necessarily either.
yeah, but again, I understand you guys can't tell each other what to do, but working together, we're gonna a lot better.
That makes sense. I agree.
Anything else? And again, communication, find some way. I mean, now you guys got a lot of our email addresses. You asked how to communicate. Website, communication, via email, phone numbers, whatever it takes. But somehow, it's up to you guys to figure out how to reach us somehow, but, because we've tried to reach out to you guys, but you guys give us the runarounds, so. That's it.
Thank you, Terry. Dennis Turner? Robert?
Majorwitz.
No. Majorwitz, thank you.
I'm used to that. First off, I want to thank Muhlenberg for hosting this meeting. You all Muhlenberg people can relax. I'm from Ruska Manor. And so I've been to their township meetings twice, which they basically said they can get nowhere. They can't even get return phone calls from anybody. And in fact, they didn't even know anything about signing up for the thing. I actually told them about that when I went in to see them this first time. I went over to the Exeter command center that was set up, which was a good thing. I did talk to your office, Judy, and Tom Gombard did get back to me. I do appreciate his efforts. I also have worked with the DEP and the Berks Conservatory. They've come out. I think we have an opportunity that's PennDOT. Okay, so I'm going to look straight at you here. The construction that's going on at 73 and 12 is dumping all of that water, and that's why Ole flooded. Okay, I happen to be the second property where the creek starts. In 23 years, I've never had more than 6 inches of water in that creek. In the past year, since that project, as well as a private project, which is also going on in the same area, and I'm willing to bet the engineers never looked to see if they would affect each other, okay? I probably had 13 feet of water in my driveway, which undermined my driveway, which then meant my house was an island. Because my house is distal to the road, okay? And the creek runs through there and my driveway was undermined and disappeared. Okay, you're not gonna tell me that it's not PennDOT, because 23 years
And, you know, it's a 1,000-year storm. I'll show you the inch and a half, what an inch and a half of rain yesterday did to that stream. Not to mention the wetlands on my neighbor's property that's above me is being completely destroyed by this. And I can't believe the environmental folks aren't freaking out about it, okay? But I can guarantee you that the next rain, I won't have a driveway again. It's not a 1,000-year rain. It's the project up at the corner. Because we've had plenty of big rains. And now we can't get anybody from PennDOT to return any phone calls to Rusk Manor. I can't get anything through Judy's office. I can't get anything through Dave Maloney's office. And I'm sitting there again, knowing that the next big storm, I'm gonna be living on an island again. Okay? And same thing with DEP. They were supposed to get back to me to let me know whether 23 years ago when I built the house and put the driveway in, whether or not a plan was actually filed, because they were supposed to check their database. No response on that, okay? And I was told that I should file for a G7 plan and don't worry about it, it's gonna cost you $50. Well, the first thing in there is that I need to get engineered drawings. You show me the engineer that's gonna do me the drawings for $50, okay? So, my question is, how do we get somebody to reevaluate that circle or whatever they're doing at 73 and 12 to understand the impacts? Because I can tell you, downstream was Ole, and at the end of the day, that little creek that starts at my corner, 0.2 of a mile from my house, how does it go from 0 to 13 feet in one storm? Maybe part of that was the 1,000-year flood, but I can tell you the inch and a half we got yesterday was not a 1,000-year storm.
You can just give us your name and number, the whole thing back there, I know the engineer studies and stuff.
I just think they're not evaluating the impact of everything that's going on, because there was also a business that did a lot of grading and stuff, and now we have a giant parking lot, which used to be grassland. And I don't know that these things are all being evaluated together.
Mike?
Can I jump in for a second? We certainly were aware, Rusco Manor Township contacted us. I live there, so they know where I live and they contact me. I couldn't make that one township meeting. I wasn't in town, so I wasn't able to, so we scheduled another meeting. And we plan on bringing, PennDOT representatives from the district engineer's office, regional, I'm sorry, to come out and, talk about that. There are other mitigating things that went on there, but I think everybody deserves to understand exactly what's happening there.
Mike Smolinski?
I just saw my neighbor who lived down at the end of Rising Sun, and it gets real nasty down there. I just wanted to ask two questions real quick, like, I have 175 foot of my land borders the stream. And I had talked to you about that when you were at my house. There's a ton of debris, tons and tons of debris all along the grid. And you said, well, if you get it to the road, we'll go ahead and take it away. I found out that's a little harder for me to accomplish than, you know, just doing it with a wheelbarrow and a shovel. So maybe there might be a good idea if you could figure out a way that the township could send a track hoe or something in there. Because there's a lot of brush, a lot of logs, and a lot of stuff that would, if we get another mess, it's gonna go right down in the creek and cause some major problems.
Yeah.
Just a suggestion, I know that you have guidelines you have to follow, and you know, but it's a pretty tough thing for me to get it all out there and put it out there for you.
And that's what the township engineer will be, that'll be part of their plan, that'll be part of their proposal.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, and the other thing was, back when I had my own tractor trailer, and one of the jobs I did for our company was I hauled pine trees up to Long Island. And when I got up there, I went to the nursery to drop them off And I said, what are these things for? And he said, we're putting them around these huge, they dig big holes, basically, holding ponds, because they get a lot of runoff up there off of everything, and it goes in these holding ponds. And they wanted to make them look nicer, so they were buying tons of pine trees to plant around them. Is there any way humanly possible that that's something that could be thought about?
That's an interesting question, and there's another resident that asked me the same thing. I did a little bit of research without input from the engineer. In order to reduce 7 of the 9 inches of rain that we received on July 9th at 401 Darby Avenue, that's the old Laurel Run Swimming Association, or the South Temple Swimming Association property. In order to reduce 7 of the 9 inches of rain that passed through that site, we would have to have a hole that would hold 600 million gallons of water.
Yeah.
Now, that didn't mean anything to me, but for a point of reference, the quarry holds 200 million gallons. So you would have had to have 3 holes the size of the quarry in order to be able to hold that water. Brian, to your point about digging a big hole and letting it fill in, you would need 3 holes the size of the quarry to be able to withhold 7 of the 9 inches of rain that fell that day. So it's not practical, it's not possible.
Well, I've lived there for 35 years, and, you know, I realize that with what we had on July the 9th, there isn't too much that is possible. It was like an Agnes thing. I've heard neighbors say that it was worse than Agnes. I don't know if you were there when Agnes came, but I've heard people in the neighborhood say that. So this was like really extenuating circumstances, but what about the little ones we get? You know, like 3 years ago, we had 2 in a row. Maybe that would have helped, that kind of stuff though.
And I think the engineers will be able to, when they're all said and done with the plan, the expectation from them is what can be done and what benefit does it provide. So they may come back and say, there's nothing that we could design to help you with 9 inches of rain in 5 hours. But here's what we can do to help you with 3 inches of rain in 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's basically, it was just an idea that I picked up when I was out on the road. So I bring it up, and I know it's gonna be hard to do anything for that kind of volume of water. So, you know, I just hope that it doesn't ever happen to it again. You know.
Thank you, Mike. Cindy Millian,
No question at this time, thank you.
Tracy Rhodes.
Hi, I live on Rising Sun Avenue, and Muhlenberg is well aware of the fact, and probably some of the audience members. So I've been here since the flood, and back in 2020, I've advocated for several things. So I have a lot to say, but my one question is, I guess it's more of a confusion than a question. In the CEP pamphlet, it says nothing about how I can or cannot build a berm in a floodway. I've been told by the Conservation District that I'm not allowed to do anything, bring in anything to divert floodwater. But what am I allowed to do to protect my own property? That's ridiculous. I can't do anything. And that creek is 60 foot from my house. Like, I have no options, no options. Even you're telling me I can go in and manipulate the stream a little bit with the green light stuff. But yet I can't bring in dirt and build a berm to protect my property. I don't want to screw up anybody else's property. I know it. I don't want mine. We had an issue with my neighbor who was allowed to dump loads of stone in his driveway, his yard washed into mine. You went out and looked at somebody I complained about that dumped 80 dump trucks of dirt in his backyard. He's in a floodplain. He's across the creek from me. I complained about that. How come I'm not allowed to do anything, but yet he was allowed to because he's in the floodplain? I think it was the reason. I'm in the floodway. He did have a permit. He got cited and smacked on the hand, but he didn't have to remove any of the stuff he put in. In fact, when I called your office or emailed, and it could have been you I talked to, I don't really know. It was too long ago now. When I continued to complain about the dump trucks and dump trucks and dump trucks, he kept bringing in after the fact. I basically got told to mind my own business in the politest way possible because you've handled it. Yes, absolutely. I have the emails at home.
That's the impression you got. I apologize.
Well,
Should not have. That
It
should
was-
not have been the intention there.
Because you know what happened this time was the water that came up over the creek that was gonna go this way, went this way into my yard. And Jim Bobek saw it, and Jeremy, but he's not here, how much sediment I had in my backyard from that. 3 dump trucks, they were generous enough to give us that we had to get pulled out of our yard.
Can you meet with me after, just to give me more information, so I can go back and look at?
I mean, right now, he's still bringing in dump trucks since the last flood.
That's, you've got the guy. And for what it's worth, talk to Mark as well. But then I think that a lot of the issues will be resolved with the engineer when they're all said and done, because something needs to be done, your property especially, to be able to channelize the water through there, right? Right, and I think the engineer's report in the end, and maybe some help from Mark and USDA can get something done there.
And to my neighbors, I apologize, now you know I'm living north and south, but seriously, I needed help. Because that, anybody, go to 1311 Rising Sun Avenue, you see it. He has, you can see through the creek, he has so much built up that he had no sediment in his yard on that side from this July 9th.
If he's still dumping it, talk with Dean afterwards.
He's still dumping.
Yep, talk with Dean, he'll be able to get some guys up there.
But there's nothing I'm allowed to do.
Yeah, anytime you raise your ground 4 foot high, you're gonna be safe.
I mean, I'll talk to you afterwards, but I mean, that is ridiculous. I mean, come on. I've only lived there since 2019. This is my 3rd flood. 2021 was not bad for everybody else, but I had basement water. My ground was covered. I mean, 3 floods since 19.
You can kind of see what Brian referring to.
This is the longer, yes.
Yeah,
So if we can't dredge the creek because it's not gonna matter.
do things like your neighbor does, how it affects people downstream or across the street.
But
So,
what are we gonna do to protect our properties?
What is your response to those competitors?
PennDOT agree.
Good. Josh, are you? Guys, if we could, we're about 10 minutes over what everybody agreed to stay for, so if we could keep it down in the back so that we can hear and finish up the meeting here.
First of all, thank you everyone for being here. My question is directed towards PennDOT. We petitioned Judy Swank's office, took us about a year, after relentless emailing back and forth to get any action, but we were petitioning PennDOT previously to getting all of Judy Swank's office. The bridge on Mount Laurel Road, we are told is a PennDOT maintained road or bridge. If you drive by there right now, there is probably about 3 foot of debris from the recent storms on both sides. When we contacted you initially, there's 2 inlets that cross, half of one was only flowing. It's gonna be back to that point.
Are you
very
talking
soon.
about it by Flush Valley, or are you talking about towards town?
Right on Mount Laurel Road,
Yeah,
right there by Mount Frisco and by the houses and that other side bridge the other gentleman was talking about earlier.
Correct.
There's a tire, the water, the rock and debris is built up so much that like you can't even really see the street
Correct.
anymore. There's 3 feet. I know there's a concrete pad that goes underneath there because they cleared it out last year.
Right.
It's already back to the point of
Correct.
needing to be filled.
And we know, and we already are working on the permit process with DEP. They're submitting their district office to get that cleaned out again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Brian Oaks.
I did talk to you. I got some photographs here. I just want to get this clear. This is all public land. It's debris, dried up creek gets dry 90% of the time. Do we need permits?
I've already emailed DEP. I don't know that Ed has the authority to answer that question, but you can certainly look at the pictures. I'm sorry. It's a portion of the Laurel Creek.
I have more. That's all on public land. And all that's going to do is act like a dam, and it's going to back up and affect every point upstream.
I've got an email into Ed Music.
Now there's an exposed sewer, terracotta sewer line there. The other one coming in this way is encased in concrete. Do they need a permit to encase that section in concrete? Because if that breaks and the water level is way above it, it's going to flood the sewer system.
And another thing, there's a water main break up War Run Creek. And from my understanding from the water authority, they can't do anything until they get permits. That line is shut off. How long does it take to re-establish that flow in that water line? I mean, it gotta get done.
Brian, that's a question that you may have to ask the MTA. It's at this point in time, they're entertaining not reopening that water.
Okay.
That was a tertiary connection that they may not reopen.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
But that sewer line, that should be encased in concrete. Huh?
This one.
Yeah, that's a terracotta pipe. And that's exposed. Now, it took a sectional wall out there. Now they gotta clean the creek somehow and demo that. I mean, it's huge. It's a picture there of my daughter standing in front of it. This stuff gotta get removed. And I don't know if this comes under the green light section. I would think it would.
Sound without seeing it, it sounds like, it sounds like.
So all this stuff will affect people, Mount Laurel Road, everything's going back up, but those are points of, they're going to dam up.
Is this on your property or on?
That's all parkland, township land.
We learned about it last week.
Yeah, I walked that creek, it's dry 90% of the time. I mean, I don't know if you can go in with equipment to get it out without disturbing the bed.
We'll wait for Ed Music's response, which we'll expect one from him tomorrow. Yeah, thanks, Brian. Carly Landis,
Can we take these pictures for this guy? Yeah, he is.
Can you take a picture?
Yeah.
I might be a little bit of a different perspective. I've been here for about 2 years. I'm a renter, so I can only speak from my own experience. One thing that I think on a positive note, I really appreciated the Muhlenberg Township app. That was how I found out about the boil water advisory. It's nice, it just comes right to my phone, so just a bid there. And I know we've talked about some of the distancing, but I would like to put a bid in as well. If we can try and communicate as much as possible to help stop these water main breaks when they happen, or work to try and get that infrastructure reinforced as much as possible. It does cause problems, especially I have an older resident that lives with me, so it's not like we can just hop in a car and go somewhere else until the water main is fixed. It causes some problems, and my problems are probably very small compared to what I've heard here. So I'm so sorry for what everyone has suffered through truly. And I would be interested, Emily, to have your contact information at some point. I would have some more individual case questions about additional insurance.
thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Beck. Mike Gerhard, Mr. and Mrs. Maxinelli. Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, everyone, for being here, and especially a really great example of intergovernmental cooperation. I think we discussed this earlier about how different municipal organizations can work together. We're seeing it right here. It might be a couple months too late. It might be a couple decades too late. But I'm grateful that this finally is happening. So my family moved into this community about 55 years ago, into the current home where I live. In 1972, the parking lot across the street from my home was a lake. We spent the whole night standing on the toilets, every member of my family in the basement, while 2 feet of sewage came into that basement. It was my understanding that the improvements made to the Fritz's Island plant would make sure that never happened again. In 2020, my wife and I bailed that sewage out of our basement for approximately 2 hours. In July, we were bailing sewage out of our basement for 4 hours. So I understand that the weather is changing, the climate is changing. I understand that we have limitations, first with the natural environment, the building that we've done, the attempts to balance economic development with the need to have a quality of life in our home. I was fortunate because I don't live in a floodplain. I was not directly affected by the creek. But I'm fairly clear that the built environment and all of the stormwater coming off of the locations that Stu Rockley described contributed to, you know, the lake, and I have photos. I don't know if everyone here saw those on Sunday, July 9th at 4 p.m, but I have them in case anyone wants to see them. 6 feet in the street, 20 feet up onto my property, 40 feet up onto 4th Avenue. So those things didn't really directly affect me. What did was the failure of the infrastructure, like the septic and the sanitary sewers, the stormwater remediation that doesn't exist because most of the homes were built in the 20s. So the one question I have to ask, and I'll tell you right now, Jim, I appreciate all the effort that all of you are doing to make this be as the best possible scenario, however late it is. But I'm just going to tell you right now, it's impossible is not the correct answer to this question. So take a moment and think about that. It's impossible is not the correct answer. So my question is to give you some homework. And your homework is, what can you do now so that in 2050, we're not having this meeting again? Most of the people in this room are probably not going to be living in Muhlenberg Township in 2050. I know that most likely I will not. What can you do now so that infrastructure, the natural environment, the built environment can resolve the kind of situations we have? In July, we had a year ago, we had 3 years ago. The last thing I'll say is that having sewage in my basement, that takes something away from me. I didn't lose much property. We could do the effort ourselves. But I know I personally, and everyone here in this room who was affected by that, lost some peace of mind. And what was removed, that we'll never be able to make that up. If the Muhlenberg Township Authority got a $100 million grant and built a new sewage treatment plant and put storm drains in every street in Muhlenberg, you will never be able to return that peace of mind. I cannot go into my home and sit there and say, I'm going to be protected. So with that, I'm going to ask everyone to take this homework, think about what you can do, and let's see what happens over the next few years. Thanks very much.
Joanne Mania.
Yes. Hi. Good evening. I'm so sorry to come and bother you, but I have a lot of questions. I live in 1803 Mount Laurel and I have flood insurance. The first year that I moved here, for the past 2 years that I've been living there, first year I had a flood and I lost everything. Then this flood, I lost everything. I was one of the ones rescued through the window. I don't know if you recall that, on July 9th. Now I have flood insurance and I've asked them, what can they do to be able to help me with 500 feet of fencing that I lost? They tell me that they don't cover that. Okay, I understand. But he's taking $20,000 out of my personal property items to put it into the structure of the home, yet he's not putting the 20,000, and I lost more than $100,000 in personal things. All my floors is gone, all my furniture is gone, everything that was in the garage is gone. And he's telling me that he can't give me that money because I didn't have an AC on a detached garage. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought.
Well, first, that's a flood insurance question.
Yes.
That's a question that you have with your flood insurance carrier.
Yes.
Not with the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection or the Berks County Conservation District. Now, maybe Emily can offer some guidance there.
Right, I wanted to see if she
Okay.
could offer some let me know if there's anything
So
that I
is it
can do.
NFIP insurance or is it private insurance?
Is our flood insurance.
Who is it through?
National General Torrent Technologies.
Okay, it sounds like it's private insurance. So the way
Do you have a mortgage on your home?
Yes, I do.
And did your bank make you buy this to get the mortgage?
Yes.
So, probably,
Yes.
No, it doesn't have to be. Even if she's mandated, they can get NFIP insurance or private insurance.
And the bad part of it is that after I make the claim, they wanted to reduce my coverage. And then they asked me to pay them $117 extra. So I said I would, and I did, but he's coming back with less coverage for my personal items. Less.
And that's private insurance.
That's private insurance. Okay, what is the difference between your flood insurance and my regular
One's
insurance?
federally backed and one's not.
Mine is not backed.
So private insurance, when you get private flood insurance, it kind of functions the same as what you would for your car insurance. So if you have so many accidents, they have the ability to kind of kick you out.
But this is the second year that I lived there and I had 2 floods.
I'm just giving scenarios, so you're not gonna get kicked out.
Oh.
So just like you would for your car insurance, you have so many accidents, some companies will tell you, okay, we can't cover you anymore, or we're gonna change the way your policy is. They have that ability because they're private insurance. And if you have so many claims, we have seen them kind of say, we'll not cover you anymore. The only option you have is NFIP. So the NFIP insurance is federally backed. You cannot get kicked out of it. So, and that's the difference there. So that's what you're looking at very different. And there is a 30-day waiting period for flood insurance in general. So always keep that in mind. So if you see a flood coming, you're trying to get insurance, it's not going to work that way. But it all depends on looking at exactly what your declaration is as far as your coverage. And that's gonna be, okay, what does it cover as far as contents? What does it not? What does it cover as far as your structure? So when you think about, as far as the NFIP insurance, when we were talking about the structure, it's basically if you take your house and just lift it up and kind of shake it, what falls out, what doesn't. Things that fall out are your contents. Things that don't, like any installed appliance, we're not talking a refrigerator, we're talking if you have a dishwasher that is actually installed. It will not cover washer and dryer. It will cover a heat pump. It will cover your water softener if it's attached. It will cover if you have central air because it's attached. It will not cover a window air conditioner.
What about the way? Because now I'm getting black water, smelly water, and my bathtub is yellow. And my toilets are yellow because of all the water that's.
So it will cover the pumps that are attached to that.
It will cover the pump.
It should be covering the pumps that are attached to that. It will not cover any landscaping or fencing or anything like that.
Oh, that was 500 feet.
Yeah, so it will not cover any of those types of things, but you have to look at your declaration too, because it ended up happening with the school too, as far as looking to see what is actually covered, what's not covered. So looking at that declaration and knowing when you're getting your policy, what is truly covered and what's not. As far as what they use as deductible and along those lines.
And then another question that I
And there is
have,
a max amount of coverage too, so you have to make sure whether or not you've gone past that.
for the personal, I did. I did,
So
but
they'll
I
only
didn't,
cover up until that point.
but I didn't think that he was gonna knock off the 20,000 that were part of my personal stuff over there. Because the garage didn't have an AC, this is a detached garage, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it all depends on how the policy is written when it goes to that private insurance.
I need somebody to take a look at that.
So maybe her insurance company's treating.
Yeah, I think we should leave the
Yeah,
conversation.
it could be,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, but
That's
what about
the
the insurance? So I mean, if she believes she's being mistreated by.
Yeah,
So
I
you
am.
can call the Department of Insurance.
May I have the number, please?
Absolutely, I can get that number for you.
And then I wanted to ask you one more question. Can somebody help me raise my home so I won't get flooded again? Because every time it rains, I'm so serious. Every time it rains, I'm panicking because I had to get out of there through a window. And of course, so I'm panicking. Can somebody help me?
I'm gonna give you 2 different phone numbers.
Okay. Well, thank you very, very much.
Well, once you catch up, we got one more person to go, so let's get through one last person, we'll close the meeting and then you guys can talk.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Erica Vinsky?
No question.
Okay. First, I want to thank everybody. I know, everybody, it's a stressful situation for everybody. I want to thank all the panelists. Take a moment to recognize that there's 8 different state, federal, and county agencies that all came together on one night in one room at one time, which I think is a pretty impressive thing. So I want to thank all of them for being here. We will have everybody's contact info on the Muhlenberg Township website tomorrow by midday. So if you have any specific questions for any one individual, then please reference that. If you have any questions in general, then contact me direct and I can point you in that direction. For the sake of time, we're gonna close the meeting now. If you have additional questions, then please come up and ask, but I think we give some of these guys who are traveling back to Harrisburg an opportunity to go, so thank you.
Just one thing, what about?
Go ahead and talk to me.
Well, in general, what about the people that are older that don't have the technology like Facebook or computer to get this information? What's being done for them?
Well,
I'm just saying, I'm just saying, I'm seeing elderly people